It's my life. It's my life.
And welcome back to Collect Them All or Die Trying, the spoiler room, comic cliff notes. In light of Arson not able to do some of these videos, I figured I'd try something new, and I really hope you guys like it. Check it out. Before we get things started, go and check out my man Frank Castle at coffeeandacomic.com, and you can get all of the Something's Killing the Children David Mack packs. And if you order something now, you can use my special code Collect Them All to get 10% off your order. Go ahead and check it out. All right, let's get into Something's Killing the Children. Angels of Archer's Peak, Part 1. Written by James Tynion and illustrated by Dell'Edera. Man, I've been trying to practice that name like I'm trying to win a spelling bee, I'm telling you. Nonetheless, this is a series I've been jonesing over for the last couple of weeks, and I'm glad to be here right now sharing it with you. So we open up to a group of friends having a sleepover, and man, I'm just confused, because I have to know, was this before or after the pillow fight? And nobody's got a bloody nose? Man, what kind of sleepover is this? Anyway, so they're playing Truth or Dare, and it's James' turn. And if anybody knows, playing Truth or Dare, we're never gonna pick Dare, because we know your friend's gonna tell you to eat a dirty mop or something, and we're not having that. And neither is James. So James picks Truth, and Noah goes ahead and asks him, after a while of thinking, saying, "Hey, I got it. What's the scariest you ever been?" And it seems this is right up James' alley, because he starts turning into James Tynion and starts telling a story. But none of his friends want to listen to any of his dreams again. But James is really adamant on convincing them that this was not a dream, and what he's about to tell them is very real and really happened. So James starts telling his story about how one night last week, while he was alone and his parents wasn't home, he heard this noise coming from outside the ravine, while in the very room they stand in now. And he explains how he got a quick look for a second of this thing that had long fingernails and sharp teeth, and that it walked towards the house, and it quickly lost focus as he turned out the lights to hide under the sheets in the couch. And at this point, and James' friends start treating him like Vern from Stand By Me, because nobody's buying it. And he's saying that you're just trying to freak us out and scare us. It's not going to work. So James looks at Noah and he says, "All right, fine. It's your turn. Truth or dare?" And then the scene jumps from James sitting in an interrogation room across from what seems to be a detective. And his shirt is full of blood, and James just can't stop crying. He's trying to tell this cop, "Look, it wasn't real. The monster wasn't real. I made up this story because my friends just like to hear about my nightmares. It wasn't real." And at this point, the cop doesn't seem like he's really buying his story either. And he's kind of being a little sarcastic when he tells James, "It's okay. We know. We know there's no such thing as monsters. Just tell us so I can understand what happened next." And what James says is, "I heard them screaming," as he wipes the tears from his eyes. And after James's full house scene, we jump to 2 weeks later, where we meet One-Eye Lily and the local butcher shop owner. Nah, I'm just kidding. But it's the best way I could describe this scene. I mean, it was genius on my part. But she's standing there, and she's got 2 bloody machetes, and she's looking like she's got more blood on her than a hostel from Europe. So she sits for a quick rest as she's gulping a bottle of water, and One-Eye Lily asks her if it's over. And with a not so comforting answer, she just says, "Yeah, it is for you, but not quite for me," as she gets a phone call from St. George, which she doesn't look too inclined to answer, but answers it nonetheless to confirm that the job is done. And she writes on her forearm Archer's Peak, and that she can get there within 16 hours depending on the bus schedule, and she's in desperate need of a shower. So she hangs up the phone and turns to the girl, asking her if she could use her shower, in which the girl replies, "Yeah, my parents won't be home." So she goes, "Fine, let's get to that shower, because I stink." And then we flip back to Archer's Peak at Archer's Peak's high school, where James is standing in front of the school at a memorial of his friends. where he's confronted by another student named Dan, who's really pissed because the first question out of his mouth is, "So, you killed them, right?" And as one of the other students try to hold back Dan, he goes in and he's like, "What?" He chopped up his friends and he probably chopped up the rest of them too. I heard the cops had to pull the kids' intestines out of the tree. That right? Your little boyfriend? And he's giving it to James. And at this moment, it seems like Dan is setting up motive as to why James is a suspect in the murder of his friends. And Dan just goes on to say, "I saw the way you looked at them in the locker room, the way you looked at everybody, you perverted son of a..." And he's pulled off by his other friend who says, "That's enough." And Dan, he can't seem to shut up because he says it. He says, "But Robbie, he never did nothing to you. He never even called you a goddamn name." And James, he can't take it anymore because he screams off the top of his lungs, "Shut the front door." And this gets him a trip to the principal's office. And if you ask me, Principal Mr. Collins is one cool dude. And he asks James, "Man, what am I supposed to do about this?" James like, "I don't know, call my dad." The principal's like, "Do you really want me to do that? I mean, is it really necessary?" And he's told him, "Hey, you should have really just punched him in the face. Because if anybody deserved it, it was him. Not that I'm advocating violence or anything, but man, he really did deserve it." And Principal Collins goes on to tell James, "It's okay. You don't have to fake it. Nothing about this is all right. 9 kids dead in 2 weeks, more missing every day, and nobody knows a thing. The news cameras show up for one day. Now they can't even return my calls. The sheriff's office doesn't even know where to start. They think it's a rabid bear." And as James gets up to leave Principal Collins' office, he asks him if he's going to call his dad. And with a sly smirk on his face, Principal Collins is like, "Here, only to tell him that you should have knocked Dan Brisby out of his pants." Like I said, Principal Collins, Teacher of the Year. And now we switch over to Archer Peak's bus station, where we met with the arrival of the mysterious butcher and her dark eyeshadow. Yeah, and she's sitting on the bus and she has a stuffed doll. But this lady, she tries to have a casual conversation with her. And she says, "Archer's Peak, hey, this is your stop." She's like, "Yeah, terrible about those children. Yeah, wish somebody would do something about it." Yeah, that seems to be about all she says, and the extent of her vocabulary. And as she exits the bus, she's overwhelmed by looking at this board full of missing children, and she's approached by the sheriff, who says, "You know any of them?" And her answer is, "You could say that." And then it cuts back to James, who's leaving school, listening to a message from his dad, who's basically just telling him that he's going to be running late from work and that he has to pick up his sister from field hockey. And he has to talk to the sheriff as well. But he's trying to save James from all the details because we all know James is grieving and he probably really doesn't want to hear it right now. But he does tell James, when you get back to the hotel, make sure you double lock doors, just in case. And James just stops and he's just looking out into the beyond because he knows there's something out there in those woods and he's just staring. And on the way home, James is stopped by the mysterious butcher with the dark eyeshadow and they have a conversation and she's like, "Hey, you're James, right?" He's like, "Yeah. Are you gonna kill me?" It's like, "Probably not, but I need to ask you a few questions." And at this point, James thinks she's like a cop or something. But she tells James, "Do I look like a cop? Because I'm certainly not a cop." She asks him, "I already know what you told the cops. So I'm not interested in what you told the cops. I want to know what you saw." And this is when we finally get to see James' point of view, because it flashes to James' memory of what happened that night. And he's, of course, in the woods. And he sees his friend and he's screaming, "Where are you guys? Where are you guys?" Because he can't seem to find anybody. And he sees one of his friends who's pleading for help. "I need help." Noah grabs his hands. He's telling him, "I can't feel my legs." And sure enough, this kid's half the boy he used to be. Literally. Because entire bottom half of this boy is missing. He is literally chopped in half, and all you see is streaks of blood rolling down the woods. Then he sees the half-mangled body of his friend Carl, and then he sees his other friend Tyler, who's alive, but just barely, and he's basically just choking on his own blood, trying to get words out, but just can't. And we finally get a glimpse at this creature, this monster that stands before him, who picks Tyler up from the floor and literally proceeds to tear him in half. I mean, this is graphic, gross, gory, and this is exactly what I love about this series. And man, James is trying really hard to convince himself that this isn't real. This is not happening. This is not real. But he's just kidding himself. And then we cut back to the mysterious butcher and James, who she thanks for telling her the entire story and his experience. And she gets another phone call, which I'm thinking is probably from St. George, but I don't really know because they don't really say. But nonetheless, she's very annoyed with the phone call. But during the phone call, she classifies the event that's happening at Archer's Peak as a Class E7. What this means, I don't know. But nonetheless, it's a Class E7. And she says, "I've got it handled." And James looks at her with a scared look on his face, kind of like, "You've got it handled? What do you mean by you got it handled?" And our mysterious butcher tells James straight up, "You've got a monster in the woods. And that's why I'm here," while she pulls out this big Rambo knife. And she tells him, "I'm gonna kill it." And James replied, "Can I help?" And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. That's the conclusion of The Angel of Archer's Peak Part 1, Something's Killing the Children. And I really hope you liked it. It's just something new for me. This is something different. And if you like it, give me a like. Comment in the comments. Tell me what you think about it. Tell me what you think about the series. And see you later.
It's my life.